Rocket News. I am Amy and I'll be your host today. I have with me three very esteemed colleagues from my technology team, and we're going to talk to you about WWDC. We're going to look at it from three different perspectives today. So Russell will be looking at it from the user perspective, Tyler will be looking at it from the developer perspective, and Al will be providing kind of the business perspective against all of the topics that were covered. So let's get started. So the first thing I wanted to talk about today is that for the first time ever, WWDC was virtual instead of in person. And I want to talk about like how that was different and how it kind of changed all of our perceptions of what happened. So I know, Tyler, you've been there in person several times. How was it for you this time being virtual instead of in person?
Well, it's definitely different, but I think overall it was still a very positive experience. Overall, from all the videos and the conference itself has definitely felt a lot more streamlined. And I think the lack of the clapping is a little refreshing. It's gotten a little ridiculous over the years with clapping. It feels like people are clapping every minute or every 2 minutes. So it was really nice to have kind of all of that edited out and just a very streamlined keynote and platform State of the Union. And it actually, not only were those sessions shorter, but kind of across the board, all the sessions have really felt a lot shorter and really kind of only as long as they need to be. They don't have a whole lot of extra fluff that was kind of in the 40 to 50 minute sessions that we used to have. So that's been really nice as well, but it has also felt a little overwhelming too, because it feels like there's just a whole lot more content this year, and getting through it is definitely proving to be a challenge. And that's really something that I miss about being there in person, is that you're there for the 5 days, and you've kind of got no choice but to kind of absorb and soak it up as much as you can, going to like 5 or 6 sessions per day, and really just having the time, just being there and having the time to absorb all that material is really helpful. And then other things too, meeting up with old coworkers, that was always a fun experience. And of course the bash, always fun as well. So missed some of that, but overall I think it's still been a great experience.
Okay, thanks, Tyler.
You said about the hour-long sessions, when it's live, and a lot of them are shorter this year, and that has actually been really cool, because that hour-long format is great when you have to shuffle people from place to place. But if you don't have to shuffle people from place to place, you can laser focus those sessions.
Absolutely. And the sessions can be different lengths, right? They don't all have to be the same length in that.
Yeah, I've seen some as short as 7 minutes.
Yeah, it's been really nice to be able to, when I don't really feel like watching a longer video, or I've just got a few minutes before my next meeting or something, finding like those 7-minute videos, 15-minute videos that you can kind of just pop in, get the content and get out, and not have to commit to that whole 40 or 50 minutes that you would normally have to.
Sure. So Al, how about you? How's the online format working for you?
Well, this work from home future is like here, right? So we're conferencing from home too now. I thought it was really interesting. Apple always does a good job of dealing with the human factor first. They opened the conference before anything else, talking about the human impact of COVID and talking about the human effects of the social injustice that we're talking about right now. So they didn't miss a beat as far as that's concerned. So that was awesome. And then from an inclusion perspective, if I'm not mistaken, everyone could attend the conference this year, not just the keynote. You could actually attend the sessions, both developers and the general public. So I thought that was amazing. So if changing logistics up means more people can experience all of the sessions, I think that's great. And that's how you kind of start to deliver on the promises that Tim Cook was making when he was talking about including more people in the conversation and developer community. They've already taken the first step. So I thought it was great. They didn't miss a beat.
I think that's a great point. I know in the past, it's always been the people who go get a different experience than the people who are watching it online. And now everybody's getting that same experience, which is, it's amazing. Yeah. So, all right, well, let's kind of switch tacks and talk about some of the cool tech that came out. So I know, at least from what I hear, everybody's really fired up about app clips and widgets. I hear a ton about it from a lot of developers. So Russell, what are you excited about with app clips and widgets?
So I've always loved, just as a person who absolutely loves the Apple platforms, one of the things that I loved most about the theory of an of phone apps on your phone is that they are hyper focused. They're focused on doing one thing and one thing only. And over the years, as the phone's capability has grown, so has the concept of an app, and now they've become very large. And the widgets and the clips are two different views into our data, and they're two different ways to strip the concept of an app back down to its absolute core, and it just does one small thing very, very well. And that is so cool. And they're in two different ways. Widgets are awesome because they are about you, very much about you. And app clips are about where you are, because they're designed to be triggered in the real world or in the middle of some other experience completely outside of normal appness. So you've got two different viewpoints into this tiny little focused thing. And I'm really looking forward to getting reintroduced to using my phone in this hyper focused way.
That's very cool. I know my daughter's super excited about the widgets part. So,
Yeah, and
so
I think
Al,
that
how
that
about you?
focus.
Like, what about from the business side? Like, how do you think businesses might be able to take advantage of these?
Well, I can tell you right now, usually as a business, you're going to flock to, delivering your customers a mobile app experience. And I think you should continue to still do that. Some years back, we introduced wallets, and I don't think business is really caught up with how to affect change with wallets. There are some really cool things happening with it, but I don't think it caught on well. I'm a fan. But right in the middle now, we've got these app clips, and to Russell's point, they're hyper focused on serving you in a retail experience or hospitality or even healthcare at the moment. And if there was another takeaway of what we've been talking about as far as the conference, there was a lot of in-context changes, like we're meeting you where you are. Siri now, even the UX has changed totally, so you can continue doing what you're doing and engage Siri. Phone calls right on the app, it used to take up your entire screen. They're gonna shorten that now. So everything was kind of about in-context experiences. So app clips just kind of plays right into this. As far as the business community, look, if you're gonna make an investment in a mobile experience, which is what you should be targeting, not a mobile app or a site or anything like that. Think about the experience and then meet your customers where they are. App Clips is going to get you there very quickly. You can do some testing, service your customer directly, and then gather some data. Maybe you don't need an app, or maybe you can build a better app now with your learnings from App Clips. I think it's a very focused way to get the customers exactly what they want when they want it.
Awesome. So Tyler, what are developers excited about?
Yeah, I think this is a great push from Apple to kind of really streamline the app experience, right, and make it so that it removes a lot of the friction from having to go into the App Store to download an app, right? So the smart app banners that you see on a lot of websites up at the top, that will actually be triggering your app clip experience now instead of linking you into the App Store. And what I thought was really interesting about the app clips is that they really are kind of just another application target, but there are some restrictions that devs have to abide by. That the biggest restriction is the binary size. So app clips need to be less than 10 megabytes, and that's really to let Apple kind of follow through on the promise of app clips being kind of an instant launch experience. But then also on the marketing side and the publishing side, the kind of the card UI that gets surfaced whenever you land on a page and try to kind of first step opening the app clip experience to confirm that you want to actually open it is built entirely on App Store Connect. So you just upload some graphics, some descriptions, and Apple is actually providing kind of that standardized UI under the hood. So they've really made it easy and streamlined it so that devs just have to focus on the app clip experience itself. And making sure to really only include the features and functions, and especially third-party SDKs and that kind of stuff that you absolutely need in order to stay under that 10 megabyte size limit. And then also it seems like they're really pushing devs to adopt sign in with Apple and Apple Pay, right? Because that's another high point of friction that users often encounter when launching an app or trying to do things in an app is having to create an account or sign in, but then also having to enter payment information. So I think it's imperative now that you support those two technologies going forward. And as for widgets, they kind of following along the same trend with widgets. So they're not actually mini apps on the home screen. So, don't think of them as being able to do complex UI interactions or anything like that. I think kind of the most you get is maybe a series of buttons that you can kind of interact with is kind of a shortcut into your app experience. But I thought it was interesting as well. They actually follow the same principles as complications on watchOS, something that we've had for a few years now, to where it's basically you're providing the system with a timeline of data for your app, and iOS takes care of surfacing the right information at the right time. One other final thing about widgets that I thought was really interesting is that they actually require you to build them in Swift UI. So of course, Apple introduced Swift UI last year. Some devs have really started to embrace it and adopt it, but we at Bottle Rocket, we kind of we're waiting until this moment at WWDC to kind of see how it played out. We all remember the transition from Swift 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. And certainly some of those early transitions in the Swift programming language were quite disruptive. They could be quite disruptive, but now with Swift UI being a completely additive set of features this year, there's no source breaking changes. They're really pushing that adoption. And it's also from a performance perspective as well. Using Swift UI for the widgets actually allows Apple to kind of render those views ahead of time and serialize those views and kind of save them locally so that, as I said, it's not a mini app that's running with a complex UI or anything like that. It's more of kind of the very power efficient model that we've had on watchOS with complications.
Wow, very cool. Thanks. And yeah, I've been hearing a lot about Swift UI. It's neat that they were able to really target the focus of that. So, all right. Well, the last thing I wanted to talk about today was privacy. I know that's kind of one of the big tenets that Apple is known for. And there were several announcements this week about that. So Al, what about from your perspective, like what were the big things around privacy that happened this week?
If you could take a business lens here, one thing I talk about is advertisers. Let's think about this for a second. There's a lot more happening on device now. There's a lot less server communication when you don't need it. A lot of calculations are happening on the device. What they introduced too was this social advent where you could actually mention people in your messaging. You could create threads. You have even the maps now listening socially to provide locations. Even the groups are now enhanced and as far as messaging. That's less time I'm going to spend on social media, Instagram, Facebook. I'll still do those things as a customer, but now advertisers are going to start having to figure out how they can get attention paid to their brands outside of Facebook and Instagram. They've made it really easy to do that on those sides of the house. They're going to have to figure out how to get those advertisements and to get their brand messaging on the device, right? And that actually helps the customers stay in command of their data. They get the right to be forgotten. They can continue to carry that freedom, and advertisers will have to contend with that. So we'll see what happens with that.
Great. So Tyler, what about from your side?
Yeah, I think from a dev perspective, there was a lot of interesting privacy announcements, and it's really, I kind of view it as kind of more of the same. Apple has really been honing down on privacy, especially over the past, I'd say, 3 years. But I think one of the biggest impact that we're going to see to both apps and kind of marketers, advertisers, and that kind of stuff is now the advertising identifier, also known as the IDFA, is now opt-in. So what that means is that users are actually going to be seeing a prompt to when apps want to be able to track them. So things like attributing marketing campaigns to actual app installs and purchases, that's going to actually now surface a privacy prompt to the user. And as a developer, it's your job to actually even go into the App Store now when we're releasing apps or releasing app updates and kind of make sure that you define kind of all the information that you're tracking. But also all the information that your app could potentially gather, right? So things like location permissions, camera permissions, all of that is kind of being surfaced up front right within the App Store. So that's going to definitely take some adjustments when we actually go to ship apps. One other thing I thought interesting as well is that we now have the ability to request an approximate location. So Apple was kind of really harping on that as well, is don't bother getting the full, exact GPS coordinates if you don't need to. If your Apple work well enough of just getting an approximate location, that's another prompt that users will get by default now. They have the ability to share just the approximate location. So as developers, we're going to have to be careful and make sure that our apps are able to handle that change. But overall, I think it's a great great way to really make things easier for users and kind of streamline the development experience as well. So now our apps can be even kind of one more degree of power efficiency and performance if they don't need to actually get that really fine-grained location information.
Okay, that's interesting. So Russell, I know that privacy is something that you're extremely passionate about, so I'll let you throw it over to you, I guess, for some final thoughts.
Yeah. So I'm going to tag on with what Tyler was talking about the location issue, in that not only does the user get to choose, but they can choose at any time to upgrade or downgrade the degree of permission that's granted. So apps are going to have to know really well what they really need. One of the neater things that I saw is that Apple designs their own first-party apps to work within these constraints. Watching a discussion of how the developers in the Maps team at Apple had to contend with these changes to location, and how the Reminders team has to contend with these changes in location, and what features are going to cease to be available to users. In the Reminders app, you're no longer, if you turn off the precise location, you will no longer be able to get a notification when you arrive at home, for example. What's exciting about that is Apple isn't taking shortcuts for themselves. They are constraining themselves the same way that all developers have to constrain themselves. And that's an exciting thing to me. I love the fact that Apple is going to be putting what information the application is going to be collecting from me as a user front and center. This is going to make a whole lot of application use cases slightly more challenging as a developer. And as a user, that's not my problem. That's something that I have to deal with when I have my developer hat on. But I'll gladly accept that burden in exchange for, when I put my user hat on, getting that enhancement.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That was great. So I want to thank you all for all of your awesome insights about WWDC this week. And I appreciate your participation. And I hope that everybody's enjoyed watching. Thanks, everyone. Bye.